I'd like to welcome you to the January 23rd meeting of the Jefferson County Board of Education. Prior to this meeting, the board conducted a work session regarding early childhood programs. No action was taken. Before we do the moment of silence, which is traditionally what we do at our board meetings, there's a statement that I would like to read based on some things that have happened today in our state. This evening, our traditional moment of silence will be observed in honor of the victims of today's shooting at Marshall County High School. This board, on behalf of this district's leadership, staff, and students, extends its sincerest condolences to the families and friends of those who died today or were injured. This district and our community stands with Marshall County and will help provide any resources needed to ensure healing for all of those affected by this tragedy. There is nothing any sadder than to lose your child. And we send our children to school for a safe environment, but we aboard the district, we extend our sincere condolences. So at this time, could we have a moment of silence, please? Thank you. Please stand for the presentation of colors presented by Southern High School Army Corps ROTC and the Pledge of Allegiance led by District 5 elementary school students. Please be seated. Tonight, our vision statement will be read by District 5 middle school students. So students, please come forth for the vision statement, and thank you for being here this evening.
All Jefferson County Public Schools graduate prepared, empowered, and inspired to reach their full potential and contribute as thoughtful, respectful citizens of our diverse shared world.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. Could we give them a round of applause? Thank you. At this time, it's my pleasure to turn the meeting over to our board member, Linda Duncan, who represents this wonderful school, and she wants to share some information with us. Thank you, Ms. Duncan, for having us tonight. It's our honor to be here for this board meeting. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much, and I appreciate all of those of you who have attended tonight. Thank you for coming here and watching this grand occasion at the board meeting. I just want to welcome everyone to District 5 and to Southern High School, where I taught for 10 years. I taught English grades 9 through 12 and sponsored the Key Club and the school newspaper for that time period. So I love to come home. It's wonderful to do that. Our district, we're 21 schools in District 5, and we extend north to Churchill Downs, which is a location near Fraser Elementary. We extend south to the Jefferson Memorial Forest, and that includes Coral Ridge Elementary. We extend east to beyond Preston Highway, and that is Lockoff Elementary. And then west, the far west, Pendleton Gap Road, and our school in that area is Medora Elementary. So we're a big district. It's 14 miles from Medora to Lockoff, and I've driven it several times, so I keep track of that to know the size of this great district. I would say diversity, thy name is District 5. We are the most diverse district in the state. We have the most diverse high school in the state with Iroquois High School, and it's 500 English language learners as part of that enrollment, maybe half of that enrollment. And then we also have elementaries that run between 120 to over 200 kids who are learning English. So I just want to mention, when you see our test scores posted at various times of the year, keep in mind the great diversity that we serve in the district, and also keep in mind that these kids are learning so much more than the content that they're being tested on. They're learning so much more about our culture and about what life is like in the United States and how to be successful in the United States. I think one of the biggest problems that I see for us to overcome is our lack of recognition of our teachers and the jobs that they do in these buildings. Imagine, Iroquois High School has 36 different languages spoken. And imagine being a kindergarten teacher. Let's go back to kindergarten and working with kids that speak 12 to 14 different languages. So my hat is so off to our teachers in this district who come here and improve the learning of our students every day. I think one of the things that also troubles me about evaluating what we do in this district and in any of our schools is I don't think the right questions are asked when our auditors come in and want to evaluate a school. The first thing that I would ask is, who does this serve, or who does this school serve? Who attends the school? And I think that's an interesting thing for all of us to realize, how District 5 differs from the others. Our groups are the same. We have 9 groups, and theirs are the same, but the percentages are so different. JCPS is 47% white. District 5 is 44% white. JCPS is 36% African American. We serve 36% of our kids are African American. And District 5, 26% of our kids are African American. Hispanic, as the district goes, 11% of the population is Hispanic. But in District 5, 18% of our students are Hispanic. Asian students, JCPS serves 4% of our students as Asian, and District 5 serves 5%. ESL in general, our English language learners in general, the district serves, or that number is 11%. But for District 5, 17% of our students are English language learners. Free and reduced lunch. Who qualifies for free and reduced lunch? As the district, 62% of our kids are qualified for free and reduced lunch. But in District 5, it's 71% of our students qualify. And that means 29% of our students are not at risk, compared to 38% of the district students who are not at risk. And advanced kids, as a whole, the district, 29% of our students are called advanced students. In District 5, 13% of our students are considered advanced. So you can see the numbers are different. We have more kids that would fall into what we call the gap group, and fewer of the kids falling into that non-gap group. So it has a big impact on the school and the challenges that the school faces. But it certainly doesn't mean people aren't learning, because the kids in these buildings are learning and they are improving. One of the things that I would look for when I go into a school to call it effective is, are there systems in place that identify the needs of each one of the students? All of our schools have that. Are there, if you go into one of our schools, will you see teachers teaching to those needs that have been identified? And I see that in all of our schools. And then when you look for how they measure their learning, I see that in all of our schools, that our schools devise lots of ways to measure student progress in addition to tests. So it's not just the test that goes on, but there are systems in place that do reveal the effectiveness of a school as far as what I think is effective. We also engage our students with deeper learning, and I see so much engagement through project-based learning in our schools, and it's what inspires students, it's what helps them discover their talents and their gifts. So I consider our schools, we have 21 schools in this district, all of them effective. And I think one of the things that we also have is very effective leadership, very effective principals, because they don't only just oversee the systems that I've mentioned, but they oversee the coaching and the professional development of the teachers. And what they try to encourage is improvement in instructional practice, as well as improvement in student achievement. So we have a phenomenal district that knows how to deal with the challenges of people who don't all speak the same language, and I'm very proud of the progress that we make, and expect continued progress from all of us. But welcome to District 5. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Duncan. At this time, I would like to introduce to some and to recognize our outstanding principal, Dr. Tyler Sharon, who will come speak to us. Thank you for being here, and thank you for having us tonight.
Thank you, Ms. Porter. We appreciate the board's support, and thank you for allowing us to host tonight's board meeting. Also, thank you, Acting Superintendent Polio, for joining us. It was my privilege to give a tour earlier today, and I enjoyed showing off some of the highlights that Southern has to offer. Southern High School was opened in 1951. We have a 1951 Chevrolet that the students restored in our Class Act Credit Union Bank here to commemorate this. And the school has a long and storied history of academic, athletic, and philanthropic success. Our Wall of Fame is filled with individuals who have positively impacted both our world and locally and nationally. This includes successful businessmen and women, some celebrities, and several fantastic educators. It's an honor for me to serve now as the principal of Southern High School. Today, Southern High School is an academy of Louisville High School. This means that in addition to the standard curriculum, including advanced placement classes, Southern is focused on individualizing each student's high school experience. We want to ensure that they are equipped to be prepared to be successful after graduation. Southern has an automotive academy where students can earn industry-recognized certifications, ASE certifications, before graduation. We also have an iGen Academy that runs our Class Act credit union and allows students to develop banking skills and financial literacy before they leave high school. And finally, we have our Medal Academy. You've seen that on display tonight with our distinguished ranked Army ROTC program, and it also offers a cyber engineering pathway and various opportunities for students to receive hands-on experience in tool and die apprenticeships. Clearly, Southern is more than your typical math, science, English, and social studies high school. Most importantly, Southern High School has a strong, long-lasting connection to the greater Okolona community. A caring and compassionate staff that is willing to work for all students, and a great student body consisting of nearly 1,400 young adults. The combination of these factors is why we call Southern High School our house. And our house is a great place for me personally to come and work, and a great place for students to go to school. Thank you again to the board and all involved for allowing me a few moments to highlight the outstanding opportunities available at Southern High School. Have a great evening.
Thank you so much, and again, thank you for letting us be here this evening and getting ready to see the wonderful things that we're getting ready to see. At this time, Ms. Terry Robinson will come forward to present us with the recognitions and resolutions this evening. Thank you, Ms. Robinson.
Dr. Polio, Board Chair Diane Porter, and members of the Jefferson County Board of Education. Tonight we begin with a student demonstration of learning from Fraser Elementary School students, Talia Cannon and Mukhtar Abdu, who will talk about their project-based learning experience at the zoo and how they work collaboratively to design an invention to solve a real-world problem using their knowledge about animal adaptations. Students, please come forward to begin your presentation.
Good evening, board members. My name is Talia, and I'm in 4th grade at Fraser Elementary.
My name is Mukhtar, and I am a 4th grader at Fraser Elementary. We got to spend a week at the zoo, at field trip. At the zoo, we learned about animal extractions, habitats, the animals' diet, how they move, and how they behave.
Our challenge from the zoo was to figure out a way to cut the grass quicker. Back at school, our team used alligator teeth to cut the grass, and we used the body to connect the feet. We used the cheetah feet to make it move quicker.
We learned a lot through the zoo challenge. We learned about the parts of the zoo, parts of the animal. We used what we learned in our groups to build our lawn mower. We used teamwork. Our team shared the jobs to get our invention done. We learned how to make a plan.
Thank you for your time, and we'd like to invite you to come to our zoo science night next Monday, January 29th.
Dr. Polio, Board Member Lyndon Duncan, and Assistant Superintendent Brad Weston, please come forward to thank the students for their presentation. Joining in the recognition is their principal, Sarah Carmichael Miller. Next, Lockoff Elementary School students Jillian Bestwick and Candace King will share information about their classroom collaboration of learning and their buddy project. Students, please come forward to begin your presentation.
Hello, I am Jillian Beswick, a fourth grade student at Lockoff Elementary. And I'm Katie King, a first grade student at Lockoff Elementary. Each month we meet with our buddy classes, we work together and do projects and work with younger students. For this demonstration, buddies met to choose an animal to research and filled out a KWL chart about the animal. We chose what animal we learned about and we picked polar bears. Fourth grade students came to the library during their buddy classes, library time to help their buddy research the animal. The first graders created their book about their animal. I made a book about polar bears. Fourth graders did more research about their animal during their own library time to learn about the structure and function of the animal. Buddies met to write a script for their Blabberize video, which we recorded together. First graders are creating an informational poster about the animal using Comic Life program. They have written an acrostic poem for this part of the project about their animal. Here is some fun facts about polar bears. Polar bears can live up to 30 years or more. They live in the Arctic region and around the Arctic Circle. Now here's a short clip from our polar bear Blabberize.
Good morning, sweetie. What's for breakfast, Mama? We could catch some seals or eat some fish. Where can we find our food? Polar bears live in the Arctic region, and so do seals and some types of fish. Why is the fur white? You have a lot of questions today. Now, our fur just looks white because of the snow. Now, let's go find some food to eat. Yay, I'm starving. Good morning, sweetie.
Dr. Polio Board Member Linda Duncan and Assistant Superintendent Dr. Paige Hart-Stern, please come forward to thank the students for their presentation. Joining in the recognition is their principal, Michelle Yates-Brown. Medora Elementary School student Logan Strong's demonstration of learning will address a social studies project that integrates art. Logan, please come forward and begin your presentation.
Hello, my name is Logan Strong, and I'm in the 5th grade at Medora Elementary. In November and December, our class learned about the American Revolution. We learned about events and actions which led to the Revolutionary War. We did simulations, acted outs, paraphrasing, and gallery walks. One of our gallery walks was a set of paintings of different Revolutionary War battles. We looked at each painting and made a hypothesis about which country won each battle. Next to the painting was data that we could use to see if our hypothesis was correct. In the gallery walk, my classmates and I figured out that a lot of historical artwork isn't accurate. Our American Revolution unit was coming to an end right before winter break, so for our final assignment, my classmates and I created Christmas tree ornaments that represented topics in the American Revolution. It was important to find correct and detailed information for our projects. It was also important that our ornaments were interesting to look at so that other students would want to learn more about our topics. My teacher brought a tree into the classroom for us to hang our ornaments on. For my ornament, I chose the Boston Tea Party because it was the main event in the revolution to become our own free country. I like designing an ornament with different types of materials. I included the ship, the color of tea in the water, the box of tea that floated in the water, and the dock to show that the ship was in Boston Harbor. I know that this ornament project will help me remember the revolution because I get to keep my ornament and look at it every year at Christmas.
Dr. Polio, Board Member Linda Duncan, and Assistant Superintendent Dr. Glenn Beatty, please come forward to thank Logan for his presentation. Joining in the recognition is his principal, Beth White. Knight Middle School students Julian Colwell, David Puckett, Tony DeVore, and Olivia Slounger will briefly share why they chose their project, what they learned, and their impressions of deeper learning using the project-based learning platform. Students, please come forward.
Hi, my name is Julian Caldwell,
My name's David Puckett.
and in our social studies class, we were given a project-based learning, which we were given an assignment to choose between either a immigration law, create our own, or make a gun bill, and we decided to go with a gun law bill so we could, because it was like a really relevant topic at the time. The church shooting in Texas had happened like the week prior.
And doing this, we've learned many things, like how a bill becomes a law and how we've learned the First to the 10th Amendment. And me and Julian both agree that this way is better just because it was the interest of me and Julian's. And it was fun for me and him to gather all this research and put into one thing, which is a presentation. I'm sorry.
My name is Olivia Sloniger,
My name's Tony DeVore.
and through a project-based learning unit, we made a website to bring awareness about autism. And in that website was included a children's book, parent input, and informational slides, along with websites that lead you to resources to help out guardians with children who have autism. And the reason why we did that was because in our classroom, we were reading a book called Mockingbird by Catherine Erskine, and it was about a little girl named Caitlin who she has autism, and it deals how she has to deal with that and how those around her will manage with that. And with that website, it is linked onto Knight Middle School's Twitter.
What we've learned from doing this project was that autism is more than just a regular everyday disorder. People from the autism spectrum, they have these special relationships and bonds with these people who have autism, and they learn how to cope with them, know how they're feeling and all that. And it makes us feel really proud that we've got the chance to do this, even this website. Like 13, 14-year-olds making a website, and it'll be better than just sitting in class and just guessing and writing it on paper about something we don't know, rather than taking the time to actually learn this. And so we really appreciate it if you guys check out the website.
Dr. Polio, Board Member Linda Duncan, and Assistant Superintendent Dr. Paige Hartshorn, please come forward to thank the students for their presentation. Joining in the recognition is their principal, Kathy Gibbs. Leicester Middle School students, Lana Maupin, Daniel Key, Nancy Liu, Sharia Patel, and Katie Kaufman will share their knowledge of mathematics by working through a problem using math tiles to demonstrate their understanding and learning. Students, please come forward to begin your presentation.
Hello, we are the 6th grade students from Lassiter Middle School. I'm Katie.
I'm Daniel.
I'm Nancy.
I'm Shreya.
And I'm Lana.
And we're here today to demonstrate numeracy through tile math.
Numeracy, what we learn through tile math, engages and challenges students in math, develops number sense, assesses with math understanding, creates an environment that invites students to be active with hands-on learning, promotes critical thinking and problem-solving skills.
Tile math rules. You will place tiles on a card. Every number will be used once, but never used twice. Start with the easy problems, then work towards the harder ones.
Now we're going to demonstrate the card in front of you. I decided to start with 1/2 dozen rounded to the nearest tenth because it's the easiest one. The answer is 6.0. The next easiest is the third one because I know the answer. 3 and 591 thousandths rounded to the nearest hundredth is 3 and 59 hundredths.
Now you will have 10 seconds to do the next problems. Time's up. Now check your answers and raise your hand if you think you know the answers. This way?
So it's 0.78.
Yeah, that's right. Does anyone know the answer for this one?
0.124.
Yeah.
Board members, thank you for your time today.
Numeracy is in our backpacks.
Dr. Polio, Board Member Linda Duncan, and Assistant Superintendent Brad Weston, please come forward to thank the students for their presentation. Joining in the recognition is their principal, John Sessler. At this time, I would like to ask all parents of these outstanding students to stand and be recognized. All parents. We are extremely proud and honored to recognize James Wyatt, Southern High School teacher, and Valerie Connor, Iroquois High School teacher, for their heroic acts of saving lives. In November, James Wyatt and Louisville Metro Police Officer Sergeant Omar Lee worked together to save a man's life in a fiery crash on I-65. A semi ran into a median wall, tipped on its side, started skidding, and caught fire. The two men pulled their vehicles over and ran to help get the driver out of the semi. One door was trapped by the concrete because the semi was on its side, and the other door was so high up they couldn't get to it. Therefore, they used the sergeant's radio and broke the window and was able to pull the glass out and reach in and grab the semi driver to safety. Last December, during Valerie Connor's 4th period anatomy class, a student in her classroom experienced breathing problems. The student grabbed at her heart and kept saying that she could not breathe. The student passed out unconscious in her desk. Ms. Connor sent a student to the office for help, and she ran over to help the unconscious student who was not breathing. With the help of another student, Ms. Connor got the student out of the desk and laid her on the floor. When she checked the student's pulse and chest for a heartbeat, there was none. Ms. Connor performed CPR until EMS arrived to take over, thus saving the life of her student. Dr. Polio, Board Member Linda Duncan, and Assistant Superintendent Dr. Paige Hartstern, please come forward to thank Mr. Wyatt and Ms. Connor. Joining in the recognitions are their principals, Dr. Tyler Sharon and Clay Holbrook. We have the honor of recognizing Board Member Chris Brady. He was elected to the Jefferson County Board of Education in November 2012 and began his term in January 2013. He served as board chairperson in 2017. He is currently a medical technology trainer for Norton Healthcare, specializing in Epic Electronic Medical Record System. His in-classroom education experience includes teaching at Indiana University Southeast, numerous JCPS schools as a substitute teacher, and several businesses throughout Kentucky as a corporate trainer. He and his wife are proud parents of 2 boys who attend a JCPS school. His record of public service includes serving on the board of his neighborhood association, organizing local Brightside cleanups, and volunteering for the Floyd's Forks Creek Sweep. Additionally, he has been a member of or volunteered for several organizations, including his son's Parent-Teacher Association, Focus Louisville, Habitat for Humanity, the American Lung Association, the Neighborhood Institute, and the Young Professionals Association of Louisville. It is with great honor that the Jefferson County Board of Education and the Jefferson County Public School District recognizes and extends its sincere appreciation to Mr. Brady for his outstanding commitment and service to JCPS. Dr. Polio and Board Chair Diane Porter, please come forward to recognize and thank Mr. Brady. Please join me in viewing a video of District 5 schools.
Hello, welcome to Auburndale Elementary, home of the Wildcats.
It feels like home. The moment you step in, you know you're going to fit in well in the school.
Welcome to Blake Elementary.
I think it's cool that we have a special class in wellness.
and they're good activities. It would help us with our life.
The best thing about Blue Lake is the teachers. They are very hands-on. So if you need help or if they see you struggling, they just walk right over to you and then they'll help you right away.
We know here at Coral Ridge that students need to be prepared for the future.
I feel like I'm academically prepared for middle school because the teachers here, they want you to learn as much as you can.
I like Fertile because of the cultural program, and we get to learn a lot about different countries, and we research about them, and it's really fun.
Our mission here at Fraser Elementary School is to make sure that every Fraser Tiger reaches outstanding academic results and that they are ready to roar when they leave Fraser Elementary School.
Children come to Hazelwood to participate in learning, growing, and just understanding one another. Truly, we are an international school and we love it here at Hazelwood.
Kenwood is a great school, and well, there is a lot of diversity here. There are different cultures from everywhere.
My favorite special area is compassion, because whenever you go there and have kindness and have respect for others.
What I like about Lockoff Elementary is it's so calm and peaceful. Everyone feels like they have a place, and I think you can just feel welcome and warm and just like you belong.
Welcome to Medora Elementary School.
I love the school because it has the greatest teachers I could ever have. They make learning fun, and they just make everybody happy.
You should come to Miners Lane because we have good teachers.
In the STEM lab, students are exposed to hands-on activities with science and engineering.
You should go to Rutherford because it's a nice and helpful place because the teachers are encouraging, they're very supportive, there's no hatefulness, and the air is just filled with love.
Here at Simple, we do pride ourselves on educating students, the whole child, academically, socially, and emotionally, to be prepared to be great citizens to our community and to our world.
Welcome to Frederick Law Olmsted Academy North. One of the most exciting things we have is that we're starting a STEAM magnet. So what does that mean? It means that we focus on cross-curricular science, technology, engineering, arts, math, to ensure that all students are actually learning real-life skills and applying it in a real-life manner.
OAS is preparing me for high school by giving me advanced courses that next year I don't have to take, and I can go ahead and move up to the next grade level. And not only that, but they're showing me that, you know, there's going to be diversity out there in the real world and how to handle real-world situations in class and outside of class.
I think what it means to be a TT Knight Bobcat is to be proud. You need to be proud that you're smart. You need to be proud that you belong to this school. And you can go out and you can be like, I'm a TT Knight Bobcat, and of course I'm proud, I'm smart, I'm taken care of.
Lassiter is known for its positive school culture, safe learning environment, and academic excellence. We have a full array of academic, artistic, and athletic opportunities.
Welcome to Fairdale High School. We have a heavy equipment program. We also have a law enforcement program.
The teachers here won't hold your hand, but they'll help you out when you need it, if you ask for it, or if they see you struggling, they'll help you out. They'll pull you out of class, they'll do something to get you back on track.
My vision for Iroquois High School is to provide a high quality of education that prepares our students to be responsible, productive citizens who will graduate college and career ready. I also want to expand the horizons of the social, cultural, and global issues that our students face in the world today.
Welcome to Southern High School.
The basics of cars to the big things on cars, you know, pulling the engines, learning all about how to check for different noises, and, you know, we go in depth.
Southern has a lot of extracurricular activities like the NHA's and Beta Club. Those are for people with good grades. We have the Science Club and also Quick Recon.
Dr. Polio and members of the Jefferson County Board of Education, this concludes our recognitions for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Robinson, very much. Is there a motion to receive the recognitions? Ms. Duncan, seconded by Dr. Kolb. All those in favor? The motion is unanimous. At this time, we'd like to give a short break to allow our students to return home with their parents and others. Thank you so much. You have done an outstanding job tonight. You make us proud. So we'll take a few minute break. Thank you. Very much. At this time, it's my pleasure to turn it over to Dr. Polio for a superintendent's report.
Thank you, Chair Porter and board members. First of all, my condolences to people sitting on this side, and those over here, congratulations. You can't see me, so you chose wisely. And then I realized everyone left from over here. So I'll at least give you a look over here so everybody can see me. So thank you. It's a pleasure to be here at Southern High School. Been here many times throughout the years. So it's an honor to return in this position. As I begin today, Clearly, our district is facing adversity and incredible challenges that since we last got together, more challenges have emerged. But I am a believer that when we have incredible challenges, it's a great opportunity for us to become better. And so even facing these challenges, I did want to highlight over the past 2 weeks some work that I think has, even in the face of this adversity, has given us hope that I think great things are on the horizon for this district. And I just wanted to highlight some of that work over the past couple of weeks during these challenges that are well documented, that have occurred. And when I get to the 3 focus areas in a moment, but I did want to take an opportunity to highlight our board retreat, our quarterly retreat that occurred last Friday, and the work that was accomplished at that retreat. And it wasn't as much about the topics or the work, but the outcome, and especially the teamwork that had occurred. And so we focused so much on collaboration and teamwork in this district, and I believe we all felt a sense of collaboration and teamwork walking out of that retreat that we had probably not felt in a while. So I wanted to congratulate our board members for that work. Even though we had to tackle the difficult issue of charter school authorization and the work and the requirements that we will have to take on over the next 60 days, the work around deeper learning and the backpack of skills, both for students that we discussed and for the backpack for our board members, I thought was inspirational and really guided us for the future. And I don't think anything could be better to say that than Lassiter comes in today with the backpack. And we have just begun talking about that, and I'll highlight that again. But it just is bringing it all together, the work. And so in the midst of these difficult times for our district and our board that I know we're going to make it through and come out the other side better, there was a positive feel walking out of the retreat that I think we all had a commitment to collaboration, working together, improving and addressing all of these challenges ahead to make us a model school district. And I believe we'll look back in several years and know that we're much better because of the work that we did and the collaboration that occurred and the inspirational work that occurred. So thank you to all of you for your work that occurred last Friday. I thought it was a watershed moment for us as we move forward. As far as our 3 focus areas, improving climate and culture, increasing student learning, and increasing organizational coherence, we also had some great work that has occurred over the past couple weeks, and I just wanted to highlight a few of those opportunities. First of all, with improving climate and culture, even with all these challenges we face that have been well documented in stories over the past couple of weeks, we had a principal meeting that I felt was one of the best we've had in many years. And there was a commitment to professional development of our principals and having a better understanding of some important concepts around culture and climate when we talk about improving culture. And so we really dug into the work of creating a shared vision amongst all of our schools, what we call a North Star, building positive teams, connecting and uniting people within the organization, developing positive relationships, communicating successfully at the district level and at the school level, inspiring and providing purpose for the team, leading with grit, and finally being a positive leader and influencer in our schools and as a district. So I think all of our principals walked out of that meeting really ready to roll up their sleeves and continue this work improving culture. So we'll continue that. Our principals are having a book study and really digging into professional development over the coming months to become great leaders of culture in their schools. So we're very excited about that. Also is involved with increasing student learning. As you know, as our board and under Dr. Coleman's leadership, we have really started the discussion around this backpack of student skills when it comes to both literacy, numeracy, and other academic skills, also balanced with success skills that we want every single student to have. So you saw great examples of that tonight with deeper learning. Our challenge is to ensure that every single student in this district has equitable access to those great programs of deeper learning, no matter what class they're in, no matter what student they are, what class they're in or what school they're in. So we have done a lot of work around, as we discussed with you, the success skills that we want in those backpacks. And when a kid graduates from JCPS, they can stand up and defend their work in their backpack of skills and show us evidence to defend that work. So we have met with the JCTA board, we've met with teachers, we've discussed this with principals and the board. We're going to have community sessions on this. But as we move into the 18-19 school year, we're going to unroll this backpack of skills, that success skills that we believe are going to give every student in JCPS, K through 12, these deeper learning opportunities that you saw tonight. And that is our goal. You charged management and district with that when you created Vision 2020, and it's our job to make sure every student gets that opportunity. And finally, with increasing organizational coherence, as you approved last meeting, the Council for Great City Schools will be here next week to review our central office organizational structure and provide us a recommendation about how we can better improve as central office and support our schools most importantly. And that involves clearly making sure that we have coherence in our structure. We hope to have recommendations by March so that changes can be implemented late this school year for the 2018-19 school year. So excited about the work. These 2 weeks have been inspiring, challenging in many ways, but I think we've really moved forward in improving climate and culture, increasing student learning, and increasing organizational coherence. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Polio, very much. At this time, we're going to move to the part of the agenda where we have our speakers. This evening, there are no persons wishing to speak to address the board regarding action on information or consent items, but we do have 5 speakers who wish to address the board on items that are not non-agenda items. So before we do that, I will, excuse me, read the section about public speakers, and then we will move on with our speakers for this evening. I'll give you the, in accordance with board policy 1.421, the board expects that persons who have signed up to address the board will limit their remarks to the subject that they have listed at the time they signed up, that their presentation will not include any defamatory or abusive remarks about that subject, and that they will present their remarks in a manner that is consistent with the orderly conduct of the meeting. Also, in accordance with board policy, the board reserves the right to limit, extend, or terminate discussion on any subject. Speakers before the entire board are not allowed to use props, displays, or other objects during the presentations. However, informational handouts may be given to our Assistant Secretary, Angie Gilpin, to the board who will distribute to the board prior to or following the meeting. Each speaker is allowed 3 minutes to address the board and may not share these minutes with any other speaker. At the end of 2.5 minutes, a bell will sound once. You will then have 30 seconds to finish your statement. At the end of 3 minutes, the bell will sound twice, indicating that your time is up. The superintendent will look into the speaker's issues and, if necessary, represent the board in following up or recommend action to the board. The full board policy concerning public participation in open meetings is available for viewing on our website and at our sign-in sheet. So it is my pleasure this evening to welcome 5 speakers to our board. Our first speaker this evening is Judith Jennings, who will talk to us about the need for trauma-informed support in the schools. Ms. Jennings, Judith Jennings, welcome. No, ma'am, you need to come down here, please, ma'am. So everybody can hear you, please.
Do I sit here?
Yes, ma'am, at the table with one of the microphones. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. And speaking about trauma-informed support and my concern about the SROs. For the past 10 years, I've directed a special project, and it's special because every Sunday night we do art-making activities with children and family in the visitors lobby of the Louisville Metro Jail. Our art activities are especially designed around protective factors, especially for these children, and we're also part of the Sesame Street Network, and we have those resources there. So our artists bear witness every week to the impact of incarceration on children and families in our community. And we also see the enormous resiliency and creativity of the children and how they respond to the protective factors. This is important because, as you may know, having an incarcerated parent is identified by the United States Disease Centers as an adverse childhood experience, and that's a form of trauma that can have lifelong effects. There's a cluster of these experiences that include witnessing or experiencing violence, being homeless, and lacking adequate family financial resources. Many of these children experience one or more of these adverse childhood experiences, and they are cumulative. This is important because Kentucky has the second highest number of children with incarcerated parents in the United States at 15%, which is almost twice the number of 8% nationally. I'm emotional about this, as you can tell. We don't really know how many of the 2,000 estimated people in the Louisville Metro Jail are parents with family responsibilities. We don't know, but we do know that 100% of the children in the visitors lobby are there because they have an incarcerated loved one. Educators across the country are becoming more aware that these children need trauma-informed support to develop into healthy and happy adults. I'm here to examine the evidence about the negative impacts of ask you to consider the negative impacts of parental incarceration on children and youth and the importance of trauma-informed training and support for these young people. I'm here to say that I know protective factors work even in the really dismal conditions of the visitors lobby of the jail. I ask you to consider that having our SROs in our schools really represent a physical force to the children who may have already been victimized by a physical force, so it could be re-traumatizing them rather than helping them develop the way we want them to. I ask you to consider financial resources devoted to the SROs and consider the financial costs of children and youth growing up in our community with unresolved childhood trauma. Please consider that replacing physical force with data-driven, trauma-informed practices, our children's future depends on it.
Thank you, Ms. Jennings, for being here this evening. Our next speaker is Chris Harmon. Mr. Harmon, welcome. He's going to speak about the school resource officers. Welcome and thank you for being here.
Chair Porter, board members, thank you so much. I know virtually all of you, so it's great to see you. And Dr. Polio, we haven't quite met in person, but we've certainly spoken on the phone, and we need to follow up from that conversation as well. It's good to see you. I want to thank you for giving me a couple of moments today. I'm director of the Fairness Campaign, and we're here tonight in solidarity and in coalition with Louisville Showing Up for Racial Justice, the Kentucky Alliance, Stand Up Sunday and Black Lives Matter, Mahente Louisville, Dearest JCPS, and many others that have been raising concerns about police officers and school resource officers in our JCPS school system. We know that evidence shows that police in schools, rather than making them safer, has actually contributed to rises in tension and violence oftentimes. Just as the incident of police abuse in Jeffersontown High School last year shows, there is a systematic and disproportionate targeting of black and brown youth, and national statistics bear out a similar pattern when it comes to LGBTQ youth, which is no surprise. These are some of the basic realities facing LGBTQ youth from Lambda Legal's Protected and Served project, a national study exploring the issues of government misconduct by police, courts, prisons, and school security against lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender students, as well as people living with HIV in the United States. 14% of all survey respondents, when asked about their middle and high school experiences, said that the attitudes of school security officers toward them were hostile. Larger percentages of respondents of color, transgender and gender nonconforming students, and transgender and gender nonconforming students of color describe the attitude of security officers toward them as hostile at a much higher degree. 14% of all respondents said that these folks were hostile towards them. Again, these are national numbers. 20%, though, a much higher rate, of transgender, gender nonconforming students described the attitude of security toward them as hostile. 21% of respondents of color described those interactions as hostile, and nearly a third of transgender and gender nonconforming students of color described the attitude of security and resource officers towards them as hostile. Where security was present, students of color, transgender, and gender nonconforming students and other marginalized students were more likely to be searched by security than respondents who had attended guarded or police schools overall. 21% of all respondents, so a fifth, with school security reported that they had been searched or asked to empty their pockets, purses, or backpacks, and a third of Native American students, a third of Latinx students, a quarter of African American students were searched at higher rates, as were transgender and gender nonconforming students searched, a third of them. So this isn't the kind of treatment that we believe leads to success for our marginalized students in our schools. There has to be some action. There has to be stronger scrutiny, additional training, and much more. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Harmon, for being here tonight. Our next speaker is Sonia DeVries. Sonia. Apologies if I mispronounced your last name.
You said it perfectly.
I said it perfectly?
Sonia.
Oh, thank you.
Sonia.
Welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Good evening to all the board members. I am here as a parent of two now grown young men. And you know, when I became a parent, I really felt like I took on the responsibility of the welfare of other children too, of all children really. And so, you know, I came here tonight with a heavy heart about what happened at Marshall County High School. You know, and in moments like that, a lot of times people jump to the conclusion that what we need is more police in the schools. What we need are more armed guards, all this. And you know, I was reading that even at Columbine, one of the worst school massacres, they actually had armed guards. So the data, even though sometimes we think that's going to make our children safer, the data does not support that. You know, what's happening with police in the schools is the schools are becoming militarized. Our children are being criminalized, and disproportionately it is brown and black children who are being criminalized. There have been cases of police punching students in the face, as we saw in J-Town, you know, throwing them on the ground, kicking them, just complete trauma. Kids have been tasered, and also there's legal charges. I read a case I couldn't believe about two teenagers, 14 and 15 years old, who pulled a prank in class with a very foul-smelling but harmless thing that they called fart juice, and they're actually facing felony charges. This is not what we want for our children. You know, I had my boys would get into trouble. You know, my 5-year-old was told that he was going to be charged with I was told he was going to be charged with terroristic threatening because he made a nasty comment to the teacher. These are not the things that teach our children to become compassionate, just human beings in the world. When I think of how it affects not just the children who are being thrown on the ground and kicked by police, but the children around them watching, what does it teach them? That's what I always ask. What are we teaching our children? Is this what we want our children to be learning? So, you know, and to criminalize just regular childish mischief and misbehavior, what I would like to see happening in the schools, and there's some evidence that it's very successful where it's being practiced on a deep level, is restorative justice. We want all our children to be safe, our black and brown children, our LGBTQ children, our disabled children. We want to build strong relationships of support, accountability, de-escalation, and restorative justice and other practices. There's no easy solutions, but I know that as a community we can move toward that, so thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being here this evening. Our next speaker is Kathleen Harry Hurling. Kathleen Harry Hurling. Our last speaker for the evening is Kim Demling. Kim Demling. welcome and thank you for being here. She's going to speak to us about health, PE, and school funding.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Kim Dimling, representing CAFERD, the Kentucky Association for Health, Physical Education, Recreation, and Dance. I'm a past president. I have a master's degree in health education. I'm speaking on the school allocation email sent January 21st, and I'm just not clear as to why art and music are specifically referenced. As a very proud JCPS mom of an amazing violinist who has also been a musician with the OIO for 7 years, I am a huge art supporter, but I'm also super passionate about prevention science, my health education, our health education and PE training, and I firmly believe that health and physical education are extremely important parts to the whole child education. Next year, KDE will implement a new accountability model due to the Every Student Succeeds Act, ESSA. For the first time ever, data will be reported on access and opportunity measures, specifically that include health and physical education. In closing, at the federal level, health and physical education is included in ESSA. At the state level, it is a part of the Consolidated Health State Plan. How does JCPS intend to focus on this relative to our students? This is CAFERD's membership's opinion, and of course it's mine, and it's totally correlative to what our profession must do. That is, we must work to educate, to improve health outcomes. It is impacting our healthcare cost, even decisions for Amazon to come to communities like ours. And it is certainly the most effective way to close the achievement gap now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Dimling, for being here this evening. That completes our speakers for this evening. We'll move on with the agenda at this time. Moving on to our action items. The first action item is a recommendation for approval of student enrollment projections for 2018-19. Dr. Polio, would you like to introduce this item to the board, please?
Yes. Thank you, Chair Porter. As you know, we had an information item 2 weeks ago where we discussed and introduced the student enrollment projections for each school so that we can begin the funding process. So at this time, I'd like to introduce Dr. Dina Dossett, who will briefly review and then take questions or comments.
Great. Good evening. As Dr. Polio mentioned, we provided a first draft of the student enrollment projections at the last board meeting, and so I just want to briefly highlight a few points before opening it up for questions. The first is that in comparison to the first draft, the second draft includes about 419 additional students from the first draft, and that increase really is the result of working with the schools on adjusting projections and getting school feedback. The other point I want to highlight is that based on our presentation last board meeting, I went back and took a look at the accuracy of the projections over the last 5 years, and what we found is that our projections in January in comparison to the first pupil month are within 1% district-wide for the last 5 years, so, or actually less than 1%. So pretty accurate projections that occur. And then the third point I want to make is that really there's 3 primary ways in which we can impact projections. We're asking tonight for approval of the 18-19 projections, but we know that projections are impacted by boundary changes, by programmatic changes, as well as facility renovations and building modifications. And so to that end, we have both a student assignment review committee as well as a facilities, district-wide facilities committee that are working and will work together in terms of any adjustments that might need to be made to projections moving forward. But with that, I'll open it up to questions. And oh, I guess I should also introduce Barbara Dempsey, the Director of Student Assignment, and Ralph Stevens, our demographics expert.
Thank you. Questions from the board? Questions? Ms. Horn.
During the last meeting where we talked about this, I did raise my concerns about District 3, the number of new construction, like there's 2,000 homes that are already been approved, and there's another 2,000 to 3,000 in the works. I understand the historic accuracy, but I do still have to raise concerns because when I look at all of the schools in my district, the majority of them are at least 90 to over 100% optimal capacity. And it doesn't, what happens is if that is the case, and then you have growing population outside of my district, what happens is they're also filling up. And so you can only put so many kids in a school. And so I just, if you look at the numbers of the, that is shown for program capacity, it is just, some of the numbers are absolutely outrageous for the schools, that if we were actually going to put that many kids in them, there would be nowhere for them to go to school. So I have voted against these allocations several times, and I will be voting against them again. I just really disappointed in that we keep using the program capacity instead of going to look at more of a the optimal capacity as a measure. So I just again have to just be very reserved on this vote. However, I am so encouraged by what you said about the student assignment committee. I am just elated to see a facility committee. It is just, it's so exciting to see this positive movement forward, because although I will not support the allocations and I just can't support it, I do fully support this movement to try to make things better. So I see that there is hope on the horizon. So thank you for all your work.
Well, thank you. And actually, to that end, at our last student assignment review committee in January, we invited the Metro government, as well as Kathy Hinko and Matt Ruther from the Kentucky State Data Center, to do a presentation to our committee on projections and housing patterns. And so that is something that the committee is fully vetting and trying to understand.
Thank you. Ms. Duncan, did you have a question? Other questions? Dr. Wilner?
Yeah, I share the concerns. I also, I understand that we can't just change the allocations without changing student assignment that's under review, without really looking at the facilities. I have also voted against this in the past. I'm going to vote for it tonight as a show of confidence that we are moving in the right direction and that we're bringing the pieces together to do this in a more organizationally coherent way. So I applaud that. I think there are real challenges. Many of the schools in my district are also terribly overcrowded. There are other schools that there's lots of space, and so I think we have to look at that strategically in a way that makes sense for the sake of our students.
So I'll say that, very valid issues when you look at the enrollment. We do have, in several areas, schools that are over-enrolled or overpopulated and some that are under. But these are clearly issues that, in order to be tackled, are going to be multi-year processes and not going to change who shows up in August of 2018. We definitely know these are issues that need to be addressed, and I think we need to be very assertive about how we're going to do that using these committees. But I think it's a multi-year process.
Thank you. Mr. Brady.
Thank you, Chair Porter. Very valid points brought up by my colleagues tonight. I know that my district, as far as its demographics and its the rate of growth in my district is mirrors, if not maybe exceeds, what Member Horn's district is. Try to be a little bit more formal when I'm behind the desk. And I certainly understand those concerns, as well as what Vice Chair Wilner has stated. I also want to pull in another aspect to think about this in relation to some of the discussion or conversation that's been going on within the last week. And the fact that when Dr. Polio talks about that, and Member Horn talks, or I'm sorry, Vice Chair Wellner talks about having a holistic vision and looking at what our facilities committee is doing, is that we have to look at it from a multi-year standpoint. And part of that multi-year standpoint is making sure that we have funding capacity to be able to do infrastructure improvements or new school construction or remodeling or what have you. One of the key components of that is making sure that we have an adequate fund balance, also known as a rainy day fund, which was mentioned by our governor as being something that we have too much of. You might want to think about that for a little bit, because that affects our credit rating and that affects our bonding capacity, which is how we actually build facilities and schools in this district. We are now at a point where we're looking at this from a more holistic and multi-year standpoint. As Dr. Polio said, we have to make adequate funding and plans for that. Rating our rainy day fund or fund balance, not just for this district, but for all 173 school districts across the state, is dangerous. And it puts all of our districts at risk. So I just want to be able to pull in another point of view for consideration when looking at allocation and funding. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? Is there a recommendation for approval of the student enrollment projections for 2018-19? Is there a motion? Dr. Kolb, is there a second? Board Member Geese, all those in favor? Those opposed? All in favor, one opposed is Ms. Horn. Thank you so much, and we will move to the next action item on the agenda. Thank you, Dr. Dossett and others, for your presentation. Our next action item is the recommendation for the approval of school allocation standards for fiscal year 2018-19. Dr. Polio.
Thank you. And so right along with projections, then comes right behind that our recommendation for school allocation standards. We've begun the process with principals talking about this work at last Wednesday's principal meeting, and hope to get school allocations out during the first week of February. So I will turn it over to Cordelia Harden, CFO, to talk a little bit about school allocations. You recall we did this also 2 weeks ago, so we'll refresh a little bit and then take questions.
As Dr. Polio said, and you all understand, we did present this 2 weeks ago, but I just want to refresh your memory on some of the items that we are now including in this new allocation formula. We are going to restore all of the reductions that we had in 17-18. In addition, we are increasing the fifth day safety net from a 0.5 teacher to a 1.0 teacher. It also provides funding for all elementary school students to have access to music and arts. And in response to the individual that spoke prior to, I want to make sure you as the board understand that physical education is part of the curriculum of this district, and this allocation is not in any way intended to impact the physical education. This is additional funding to allow the funding available for schools to now have arts and music funded, where before some of the schools were having a difficulty in order to provide enough teachers to handle that. That is our overview, and any questions?
Questions, Dr. Kolb?
I just had a question, and maybe this is more for this is more for Dr. Polio than you, but I'm always struck by how it about the safety net on page 2, how it implores schools not to sell back that position. Is there a reason we just don't forbid schools from doing that, or we make them get clearance before they do that from administration?
So the safety net, or?
Yeah, so if you, on page 2 at the top, the bullet point, you know, it says a safety net exists for the benefit of schools in our staffing formula for the fifth day projection. The safety net does not impact the need for schools to hold on to any additional allocations. And then it goes on to say our strong recommendations is that schools do not sell an additional 0.5 position in the month of February. So I've just noticed this every time, and I just wonder if there's a reason we just don't forbid schools from doing it if it's or require, approval to do it if it's so imperative that they not do it.
Sure. I'm going to let John take the initial explanation, then
Sure.
I'll jump in. So go ahead, John.
So the purpose of recommending to schools to hang on to the additional 0.5 allocated in February is that there's always a possibility, at least for some schools, that their enrollment projection could increase even further at a second major budgetary event in August.
Mm-hmm.
That way, if they have a 0.5 added in February and another 0.5 in August, you've got a full teacher.
Right.
But if they've already spent the money, if they've already used that original 0.5 in February for something else, they're not going to have the resources for that
Right.
full teacher.
Right.
And so this comes in, I mean, it is a challenging time for principals on that 5th day projection. And the first 5 days when all principals are counting students to make sure that enough are there. So essentially they don't have to give back funds or teacher spots. And so that's a difficult time, making sure that we're counting every student and we have an accurate count. And so fortunately, Ralph gives us a good projection within 1%, but there are times that changes. And I think the point is if a school hires someone in that position, either sells it back or hires someone with that safety net, then they have to give back actually that position. And then we
Right.
now have an overstaffed staff member and not just funding. And so we have to place that staff member somewhere because we've hired them now at that point. So it's just a challenge at that point that we encourage schools to have that safety net. The main reason we increased it from 1/2 to 1 is we always felt it was difficult for a school to give back a half a spot.
Yeah.
And so that's why we increased it to 1. Did I correctly say that, team?
Yes.
That all makes sense, but maybe I'm just not, maybe I'm tired and not comprehending correctly, but why, if it's so imperative for schools to not sell it back, why do we even let them do it, I guess is my question. Yeah, why is that an option for them to sell it back?
Within the state regulations, laws, SBDM has control over the staffing. And so we have to allow them to make decisions, and therefore they can sell back some staff if they feel they need those funds somewhere else.
Got it. Do we communicate, I mean, I'm sure we communicate this to principals, are we sure that, well, is there some way that we can communicate this directly to SBDMs themselves?
Yes.
Hopefully the principal will, inform them, but, who knows, whatever reason.
All SBDMs go through training, extensive training. John actually is a certified trainer for SBDM, and so he visits several schools and attends some of the SBDM, even as far as for a training process. John, do you want to?
I have a training session tomorrow night for SBDM council members.
Cool.
You inviting them, John?
Yes, of course.
We've got facility meetings.
Other questions? Mr. Brady?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to ask a couple of other things, but before I do that, I also want to just take a moment and thank my colleagues for once again making arts education and music education, which is part of arts, such an important part of our allocations here, and we're really trying to recommit. I know that in my son's elementary school, they had recently gotten rid of the music program in favor of STEM, which perfectly understandable. I understand that that's something you're going to be tested on, and you're not really tested on music. As a former music major, at least going to college initially, didn't graduate that way, but I went there with music major on my mind. I certainly appreciate our colleagues' commitment to bringing music and music appreciation to our folks. As Winston Churchill, paraphrase Winston Churchill, then if we're not careful or caring about that, then what are we fighting for? I do want to go to, and I apologize if I get this wrong, Ms. Dimley's comment about PE. I did bring this concern up when we were talking about board priorities in our work session, and we were looking at that in regards to, in my view, in regards to middle school. I've noticed in middle school, back in the day when I went to middle school, middle school, PE was required throughout middle school, and it became, we did it our first year in freshman year in high school. Then after that, then it became kind of optional. It seems like we kind of make it optional beginning in middle school now. That's a little bit disconcerting to me. I think that there are a number of benefits that you get from physical education, not to mention that there are certain kids out there that need that release to be able to focus and concentrate on the rest of their day. I don't know if there's a way, maybe it might be perhaps too late now, but maybe taking a look at this in the future of being able to look at that, at least at the middle school level. Because I think in elementary school, there's always PE, and that's always kind of, is enforced. And I know that in at least my son's middle school, one of the special areas is physical education that they do once a week. But I have concerns that we're really starting to abandon that starting in middle school. And I think this is really way too young, especially considering you're developing still. So if you want to comment on that, or I can just move on. So
I'll take it.
All right.
So I agree 100%. I mean, you're talking to someone who also taught health
Yeah.
education. That was an additional thing I taught, and so committed to that. I also believe that currently our state requirement is only 1 semester of physical education and 1 semester of health. So I agree with that, and I think it's something that we can really look into as we move forward, how to increase funding for that and work with our schools on making sure that that access is there for every student.
Yeah, I think as a middle school parent, I'd appreciate that. The last thing I want to talk about as well is we talked about student-teacher ratio in this, and I just want to, just a clarifying point, that student-teacher ratio for what we have always had within Jefferson County isn't changing this year. That's still the same student-teacher ratio we've always had, correct?
Yes, it's the same.
We had some conversations about this about a few years ago where there was a comment or a proposal to talk about increasing student-teacher ratio to be able to free up some more funds. I pushed back on that quite a lot because, when I'm not up here doing board work, I have a full-time job, and part of my job is teaching clinicians how to use computer systems, and I know that my classes go a whole lot smoother when I have just a few students to teach as opposed to an entire room full. And I'm able to go into things a little bit more thoroughly than I normally might. I'll be able to have conversations and sidebars. There's an opportunity to have more questions. I'm not having to be so married to a particular timeline. And those I feel are a lot more, I think that the students get a lot more retention out of those types of classes. So when I see lower student-teacher ratios, I look at that as an educator as being an ideal situation. Some of the research that I have seen suggest, I think, the ideal ratio is around 18-to-1, which is quite a bit lower than what we have. And I know that if we were to do that, then obviously we would have to hire a whole lot more teachers, which are in short supply. We might be able to take care of some of the extra space we have in our facilities, but we still need to revamp our facilities nonetheless. And I just want to know that, if we're, again, looking forward, not on this one, I don't expect miracles to happen within the board meeting here, but that if we might be able to take a look at seeing what we can do to decrease that, because I know that during the time frame when we were having this discussion and this issue was being talked about, this also when we had a situation where there was a bogus threat made against the schools. And a lot of folks kept their kids home that day. I didn't. I sent my kids to school, and my kids came back and reported to me, wow, that was a really great day because everyone participated, and the kid who would have been able to sink back in the back of the class didn't have that opportunity, and they had to engage. And everything was a lot more calm, and everyone retained more. And just, to me, that kind of blew up that other argument out of the water, and the fact that small class size really is more impactful, and I think can also be a key to turning around some of the academic challenges that we have within our district. So again, something to think about. I know I sound like a broken record. I brought this up before, but I still want us to try and think more progressively about that. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brady. Ms. Horn, I think you had something, and then I think that might be the end of questions, and we can go for the vote. Ms. Horn.
I just wanted to congratulate this board for being just wonderful and bold to support art and music education in every elementary school. It just kind of makes me teary. I'm so excited to cast this vote. I think that Dr. Polio, your leadership in this regard also has been very strong and appreciated. I also think that you just don't know what it will mean to schools. It seems like that $140, for every school getting that allocation is a small thing. It's not. It's very, very important, and I'm very excited that that is happening too. It means a lot to our students. So I am just wanted to thank the board and Dr. Polio and the staff for really taking the time to work it through and work it out and to get to where we are right now to be able to cast this vote.
Other questions or comments? Hearing none, is there a recommendation for approval of the school allocation standards for fiscal year 2018-19? Ms. Horn, seconded by Mr. Brady. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much for the presentation. Thank you for the vote. We're now going to move on to our information items. Our first information item is a report on the new superintendent training from the Kentucky Association of School Administrators. Dr. Polio.
Sure, thank you. When I first was named in this position, about mid-July, I got a phone call from KASA and Dr. Fred Carter, and was asked if I wanted to, in this position, participate in the new superintendent training program. Since I was acting, it was optional, or I could wait and see what happened. And so I said, sure, sounds like a great program. And it has been. It's been a wonderful program for me to collaborate with new superintendents. I think there's about a little over 20 in the state, and really make sure that Jefferson County is a part of statewide programs. And it's been a great learning experience for me. So I did want to recognize Dr. Fred Carter, who's joined us today to update a little bit on progress. I'd also like to introduce my mentor, superintendent, Dr. Blake Hazelton, who's joined us today too. They're a part of a team to support the work that I've done this year. So I'll turn it over to Dr. Carter.
All right, thank you. Chair Porter, Dr. Polio, board members, thank you very much for an opportunity to speak with you just a few minutes about new superintendent training. Of course, that is a statutory requirement for superintendents in Kentucky. When you're a first-year superintendent, you're required to complete the training. If you do not satisfactorily complete the training, you lose your superintendent certificate and consequently will be out of a position. People moving in from out of state also have to complete 1 year of new superintendent training. I am a retired school superintendent and presently reside in Bowling Green, Kentucky with my family. First year after I retired, I served as Deputy Secretary of the Education Cabinet for Kentucky. And following that, I received a call from the Kentucky Department of Education and Kentucky Association of School Administrators asking if I would serve as coach and mentor for new superintendents in Kentucky. And for the past 6 years, I've been the executive coach for all the new superintendents in Kentucky. You might be interested to know that in that 6 years, we've had 163 new superintendents in Kentucky out of the 173. So there's only 10 in Kentucky I have not had the pleasure to work with. There's a quick turnover, and I tell people it's quite simple. Superintendents today have many more challenges with budgets and with cutting personnel and cutting programs to make those budgets balance, and with assessment and accountability and all those types of things. So it's a very difficult position. When I called Dr. Polio earlier, when you named him as your interim superintendent, I assured him that he was not required to complete this training during the first year, but it was optional. We were offering him that if he saw fit to do so, and he very quickly agreed he wanted to do that. And then I mentioned the number of days required, and he still said, yes, I want to do that. I'll tell you, and this is not going to surprise you, he is a bit of a rock star when we have our training sessions. We have 17 days of training scattered throughout the school year, and those are a couple of months, basically. And I do the seating arrangements when we set those training sessions, and people stand in line to request to sit next to Dr. Polio. And I think it's something to do with the Jefferson County schools and the magical size and the idea that you guys have all the secrets to education, and they want to pick his brain and pick up a few of those. So The interesting thing about that is one day he may be seated next to the superintendent from McCracken County, a large district in western Kentucky, and the next day he may be seated next to Pineville Independent Superintendent, which is one of the smaller districts in Kentucky. But they have many of the same concerns, obviously. The training itself is talking about the normal things you would expect: school finance, school law, board superintendent relations, all those types of things. Back in the day when I went through new superintendent training, I had to actually pass a paper and pencil test on school finance and school law and all of that. And incidentally, Dr. Hazelton taught school finance at that time, and I remember him standing over my shoulder and looking at my spreadsheet of my district budget, and I thought, oh, I sure hope I passed. And Marty today does something totally different. Dr. Polio does what's called entries into an e-portfolio. And so it's kind of moving into the modern age. He provides information in support of each of the 7 superintendent standards, which you as a board will be evaluating your superintendent on for the next several years. He also can give access to the board members to his e-portfolio. If he has not already done so, I will talk with him and suggest he do that, so that prior to an end-of-year evaluation, you have access to that e-portfolio, which is very helpful. I will visit and have visited in the district a total of 4 times throughout the year. I come the first quarter and spend a full day, which I came right before school opened this year, and we traveled around the district and met several people, and everyone was just excited about the opening of schools. Of course, I'm here tonight for the school board meeting. This is the 3rd quarter. The 2nd quarter, I came for what's called the ILP team meeting, and that's the individual leadership plan team, and that involves me. The board representative was Mr. Brady, and then the mentor, who is Dr. Hazelton, was the chair of that committee. And that's just to kind of catch up on what's happened and what's facing us and where we're going from here and how the progress is going. I'll be back a 4th time, which is the 4th quarter. I'll be back for what's called a capstone presentation. Usually that is a special call board meeting because statute requires the capstone be presented during a board meeting, and that will be kind of a state of the union or state of the district message. He'll talk about successes of the past year, challenges of the past year, perhaps look in the crystal ball and see what's coming up on the horizon, and also we'll address those 7 standards again. And the reason this is kind of ideal is that this will be right before you do your end-of-year evaluation. So he'll be presenting evidence that will be helpful to you as you evaluate him. Obviously, he could pass new superintendent training and fail the board evaluation, or he could pass the board evaluation and fail new superintendent training. Those are totally separate deals. But I'm here to report that he is doing a great job. He is representing you well. He has been faithful at all those 17 days out of the district, and will continue to do so. We had 2 days last week in Frankfort. Those are just-in-time training modules, meaning that when the district sets its tax rate, he had training on that right before the tax rate was set. In the spring, when it's time to deliver some of those dreaded pink slips, he'll have training on when and how and legally what to do with that before that's done. So everything is set up with a scheme in mind to make sure he is well prepared for what he's doing. I applaud him and you for allowing him to participate in this training this year. It has made him much more capable of performing his task. And again, he has represented you well. I tell you, as a side note, in previous years, Jefferson County has kind of been considered a state of its own in educational circles. I will tell you that has changed. That has changed this year, and a great deal of that belongs to this board and to Dr. Polio. He is well respected around the state now. He has connections to people throughout the state, and some of the best practices that you guys have been doing for years, we're going to borrow from those in other parts of the state and use them and give credit where it's due, which is to you. So thank you very much. Thanks for allowing him to participate in this training, and full speed ahead to Jefferson County Schools. You guys are trending in the right direction, and it's an exciting future. Questions?
Let me say, first of all, Dr. Carter, thanks for being here tonight. We are aware of how hard he's working, and we appreciate the fact that he took this on as one additional thing to do also. So thank you for your leadership, and also Dr. Hazelton, nice to see you as well. Thank you for serving as mentor also, so thank you. Are there questions from the board? Board Member Geese.
I just had a quick comment. I'm absolutely thrilled to hear your report and thrilled to hear that in the state we're being we're being viewed as a partner and as an equal partner. I think that for too long Jefferson County has been its own walled city, and I'm glad to see that the walls are coming down and that people recognize that and that we truly are a partner in collaboration.
Absolutely. We appreciate that.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Mr. Brady.
Thank you. Again, I also want to echo the comments of my colleagues here, and I want to thank Dr. Carter and Dr. Hazelton for taking the time and helping our acting superintendent with his duties. Again, just to echo the fact that we know that you didn't have to take those on because you were in the role of being an acting superintendent. Not only do I think that that was a smart move, and even though it gave you that much more work, but it was a smart move in the fact that it gave you a sounding board. I know that as a board member, especially a new board member, very often I would have to turn to my colleagues or other colleagues around the state and it's like, okay, what about this? What about that? And Dr. Carter and Dr. Hazelton has been able to fill that role fairly nicely, and especially, in a district that is not quite like the others. And I also want to say that I too, along with Member Geese, do find that it's very refreshing to know that we are playing well with others, so to speak. And unfortunately, the perception that we are the People's Republic of Jefferson County is not just applied to the school district, but our city as well, it seems like by some in the state. But we are, we're Kentuckians too, and we are the economic engine of our state, and we have a responsibility to the rest of the state just like anything else. And we're happy to be a part of that and be able to be seen as a leader. I think there are a lot of great things going on in Jefferson County. There are a lot of unknowns. There are a lot of perception that's allowed to persist out there that isn't necessarily accurate. And I'm glad that my colleagues and Dr. Polio are working to improve those relations and change the narrative. So thank you, and thank you again, gentlemen, for your time and helping us with that.
Thank you, everyone, for comments. At this time, is there a motion to receive the report on new superintendent training from the Kentucky Association of School Administrators? Motion by Board Member Geese, second by Board Member Dr. Wilner. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you so much. We're going to move to the next information item, which is the internal audit status report by Dean Dorton. And after that, we have the acceptance of the general fund budget. I want us to do a time check and be mindful of the time because we still have the consent calendar to do. So at this time, we're going to move on to the internal audit. Dr. Polio.
Thank you. At this time, Jim Tenza from Dean Dorton will be here to present internal audit status. So I'll turn it over to him.
Thank you, Dr. Polio, Chair Porter, and board. Glad to be here today to give you an update on the status of the internal audit work for this year. And as you may recall, our internal audit charter requires that the internal audit department meet with the board at least twice annually, once at the beginning of the year to go over the plan and the results from the past year, and then this time here in the middle of the year to kind of give a progress report on how we're doing. So I know I did provide a lot of material, but there's a lot of things going on, so I just wanted to give everyone the information. But the big picture is that there's been no changes to the plan. We're continuing to work on the internal audit plan that's been approved by the board. We are behind schedule through December 31st. We're not completed with some of the audits that we were hoping to be completed with, mainly due to having one of our internal auditors sick and out for a significant period of time. But the good thing is that we have a good plan in place to make sure we finish everything up before the end of the fiscal year. And we did provide an attachment A, the detailed status. Basically those items that are in yellow had some minor findings or aren't completely finished yet. Those that are in orange are scheduled to occur as they should. And there was one item that's in red related to the attendance audits, We did substantially complete all the attendance audits through December 31st. 19 of the 48 that were finished were deemed unacceptable, and one was unauditable. And we had a lot of follow-up, and a lot of good things are being fixed before KDE comes in and does their attendance audits. But that is a higher rate of unacceptable than what we'd like to see. The other item we provided was we wanted to continue to give you an update on those significant findings from prior years to make sure they are being followed up on and are being handled properly. There's one of those that has been fully addressed that we're completely happy with. There's a couple that are in process of being completed, and we're real happy with the progress that's being made, especially on the ethics training. Management's working on a new ethics policy, and we're going to be rolling out some training. And then there was one item, the Risk Management Committee. Management has deliberated over that, researched it, spent a lot of time looking at that, and has determined that there's not a need to form a separate risk management committee at this time, that the cabinet and senior management are addressing the risks. And so setting up a separate committee is just not necessary at this time, is what management has decided. And there's, just so you know, a lot of times we make recommendations. There may be some cost-benefit analysis and some other things that just may not be practical to implement it, or timing might not be right, and so that's not unusual. A few other things I just wanted to mention. Besides working the plan, there's a bunch of other things that we do. We oversee the hotline. We provided some detail there on the hotline calls that have come in. The biggest thing there is that out of the 62 hotline calls that came in through December 31st, all of them have been resolved and closed except for 4. So the timing of dealing with those is much, much better than they've been in the past, and they're being handled properly. The other things, I do review the charter every year, and I just want to report that the internal audit charter, I don't suggest any changes or modifications in that. I do want to point out 2 things. One is the charter states that the internal audit department will confirm its organizational independence, and so I am here to confirm that we didn't have any independence problems. Whenever someone does an audit, we make sure that there's no independence issues there. We don't have people going into schools where they used to work, or if they have relatives working there. We try to keep all that separate to make sure everything's independent. So I'm confirming that we are independent. And then the other thing I do want to point out, no action right now, but the charter does say that there will be an external assessment done of the internal audit department once every 5 years. So that 5-year period would be 2020, which is still a couple of years away. I just want to point that out to you because that's something, I think we'll just need to consider whether we really want to do that from a cost perspective, and the fact that we already have an outside party, us, doing a lot of it. So do you want to have another outside party come in and look? But that's what it's in there right now, and I don't suggest changing it right now, but something we probably should look at in the next year. And then I guess one other thing I just did want to point out is I did attend the Council of Greater City Schools conference in Miami. They do a separate conference for internal audit directors and CFOs. So I did attend that, a 3-day conference. Dean Dorton paid for the cost of that. So just, first of all, the travel there and all that stuff was paid for by Dean Dorton. We just thought it was a good thing to do, an appropriate thing to do. And I did get a lot out of that. There's a lot of good information that was shared amongst the internal audit directors. I did provide a couple materials. One was a white paper that they put together that helps explain the importance of internal audit and what that role should be and different aspects of it. And I was happy to see that a lot of those we are right on target with and doing a lot of those things. So that was really good to see. And then there was a study. I shared a few statistics before, but they provided the full study and the information there. So there's statistics on the cost of our internal audit and the number of people and certifications and things like that, that I feel we fared pretty well in that statistically, but I wanted to make sure you all saw that. So I know that's a lot, but I wanted to make sure I touched all those points, and glad to answer any questions you might have.
So I also wanted to add to that, in recent Finance Committee meetings, along with our Audit Committee, we have decided to move forward on having that Audit Committee, we are taking that on, and I think it's a real positive step forward for us as we move forward. So the next time, I think you will see significant progress in that, which is, I believe, recommended by you also.
Right, and there is, in the white paper, there's a good section there too on audit committee and what their role should be, and so I'd encourage you to look at that if you haven't.
Thank you. Are there questions, brief questions of Ms. Horn and then Dr. Wilner?
I just did sure that we talked about it. The statistics do show that we are right where we should be for percent of budget being spent on the audit department, but it is a little bit misleading with the number of employees, because we're only showing, like, we're self-reporting the 3 employees, but we actually have, you know, the Dean Dorton also. So when you do the math, it looks like, because I can tell it should correlate based on our percent of budget, but it correlates in the number of people working on it too.
Yeah, that, you know, the statistics there, you know, they're a lot of internal audit departments use outside resources, so how we and how others reported that information may not be consistently applied in that, but it's, at least it's a good point of reference to have. So, yeah.
And then I guess, Dr. Polio, I would like to get more information just about that attendance, just to kind of follow up on that. It sounds like that they're, you know, they've given the schools, you know, the guidance, and they're making the changes, but just so the board maybe could not, you know, whenever that's ready, just to get that follow-up.
We have that ready. We'll give it to you. It's mostly corrected.
Yeah, okay.
Some issues from first part of the year, but we'll get that to you.
Okay.
And there's really not much time between.
Yeah.
We finished up with most of those. The ones KDE comes in every year and does attendance audits, and they usually do that in February. So I'm not 100% sure if they've scheduled that, if that's when they're coming in. But we know which ones KDE is coming in, so we look at those first, and we feel pretty good that those have been corrected. But KDE will come in and do the audit, so we'll know for sure. But then the other ones we were finishing up in January, so there's not a lot of time to get them corrected. But I will say they're most of what we found, when there was a lot of small errors, small things not being reported exactly correctly, and we got everyone was anxious to try to get it right.
Yeah, I want to just again thank our team within JCPS for really, you can see their, you know, whatever it was from the past audits, now they are being addressed. You know, we're moving in such a good direction with that. We don't have items that are just remaining, you know, year after year unaddressed. So I have to thank management again, and Dr. Polio, your leadership, for just seeing that the items that were mentioned in the audit are actually getting worked and they're moving to green, you know. So, but I'm really excited about the progress to form an audit committee. So it's exciting. We'll probably, the finance committee, James Rose, anybody would like to attend at our February meeting, they're going to present, and we did talk about making a recommendation to the board in February, just from, you know, to recommend that it be formed also. Okay.
Thank you. Dr. Wilner?
I just want to say thank you to Jim for and to your firm for taking it on yourselves to go to the Council of the Great City Schools, giving us this white paper. This was actually a really great read, and certainly I've mentioned many of others on the board how important it is that we're operating in line with national best practices. So it's great to see that, in fact, that's what we're doing. We're not making it up as we go along. We're doing it the right way according to what the national experts tell us. So I'm seeing that in lots of areas in Jefferson County Public Schools where we are more and more following best practices, and just again want to commend you for this and for the good read. It was very educational for me to look at that.
You're welcome.
Other questions or comments? Ms. Duncan?
On our on the audit committee, when we have an audit committee, will the Finance Committee sort of be in charge of that? So do they do anything with that?
I'm not sure if I heard that whole question. I'm not sure your microphone was working.
They will be two separate committees. Yeah, they're two independent committees from each other.
Okay, and because I read something, I don't know.
You're on.
All right, now, yeah, there it goes. In the best practice part that talked about the Finance Committee being the one to oversee what the internal audit was following the plan, and somehow the Finance and Audit Committee was supposed to be something that was, and the Audit Committee would be a buffer to internal audit. So, well, anyway.
There is information in that white paper that talks about an audit committee and what their roles are. Audit committee and finance committees, typically what we see are two separate committees. You can't have one audit finance committee, but finance committee is typically focused on the budget process and making sure financial reporting is done properly, where an audit committee would primarily be responsible for overseeing the external auditors and the internal auditors and making sure there's the right resources, the right focus, a good plan in place, and kind of getting deep into those audits that are going on and making sure that there's proper follow-up on any findings.
Okay.
So that's kind of the roles of finance and audit committees.
All righty, thank you. And you know, we made an adjustment in our bookkeeping. You had said to centralize, that you recommended that we centralize bookkeeping, but we appointed somebody to be in charge of bookkeepers. Do you think that is enough for us?
Right now, I've been very pleased with how the process has been working. Lori Dench, who's gone into that role, she, whenever there's a new bookkeeper, she does hands-on training. She goes there and helps them. The bookkeepers are going to her for assistance. She's helping with making sure books are closed and things are being reconciled. So internal audit's not having to do that now, which is a really good step. And so from a training standpoint and from assisting with the bookkeepers, I think as she gets more comfortable, there's probably a few other things that she can do, such as helping when, with kind of substitute bookkeepers when they're out, and maybe helping principals hire bookkeepers. I think there's additional steps that she can take, but everything she's been doing has been working really well so far.
Okay, very good. Just one more question. You mentioned that 19 of the 48 audits that were done you found unacceptable. Were you addressing that earlier and I just missed what you were saying, that they would be corrected, that it would go?
That's for all of those, and we use an 85%. What we test, if 85% of them are done correct, if it's done correctly, it's deemed acceptable. If it's less than 85%, it's unacceptable. And for all of those that were unacceptable, some of them we went back and made sure already that they had fixed them. There's others where they had to take some steps, and they've been kind of communicating with us, yes, we've done this, but we don't have the time or resources to go back and double check them before KDE comes out in February. Okay. But some we have seen that they did correct them, some they've told us they corrected, but we didn't double check it, and others are correcting them and addressing them.
All right, very good. Thank you.
Thank you very much. No more questions, so at this time, is there a motion to receive the internal audit status report? Board Member Geese, seconded by Ms. Horn. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you so much for being here tonight for the presentation. We will now move on to the acceptance of the general fund draft budget for fiscal year 2018-19. Dr. Polio.
Thank you, Chair Porter. Once again, this was covered 2 weeks ago, so I know that Cordelia is not going back into her PowerPoint charts. So you have that information. I need to reiterate, especially with the news that has come in the past 2 weeks since our last meeting, that we need to capitalize the word draft. This is definitely a draft budget with a lot of unknowns and uncertainties at this time. So between now and the next time we address it will be a lot of questions to be answered, but I'll turn it to Cordelia and John.
Overall, all I want to say about the budget itself, nothing has changed since last time as far as the presentation and what we actually are putting forward. On February 5th, we will give the allocations to schools, and the departments will be having their budgets. We're in the process of actually, the superintendent and I and John are meeting with department heads now to review their potential budgets, and they could change. But at this stage, right now, we have a $1.2 million surplus. That is after we have netted what we expect as far as savings coming in, vacancy credit, transportation refund. And having said that, that is before the governor's budget proposal. So I just wanted to highlight a couple of things from House Bill 200, which is the governor's proposal, and how it will impact us as it stands for what we've been able to pull together so far in our understanding. Within the SEEK formula, the per pupil will stay the same. However, the governor and the individuals that have assisted him in pulling this together, they are under the assumption that property assessments will go up in the districts. Therefore, the amount of money that they have to allocate towards that base per pupil is actually less. So we already have estimated that we're going to be down, I believe, John, about 6 million? Yes, ma'am. 6 million before all that even came out. But in addition, one item we're very concerned about is the reduction in transportation. And if our calculations just based on the percentage cut that the governor has proposed, that could impact us $19 million within the SEEK formula. Another item that is possibly going to come forward to the districts to help cover is employee health insurance. Right now, if it is a general fund employee, it's the state is paying that some portion of the employee's premium. Based on the percentage cut that they have told us actually today, Dr. Polio and I participated in a webinar with KDE to understand some of the cuts as they see them. So it looks like that could be about $6 million that this district may have to pick up. Textbooks, $3.5 million. Professional development, $1.3. We already know that the CERS, the classified retirement system, that rate, employer rate has gone up, so we already knew that was $17 million, but we have put that in the budget, so we have absorbed that already. We don't know about KTRS, if there's anything that's going to be shifted to us or not, so we also do not know at this point the impact of any charter school legislation, because that's still being worked on as I understand it. Then there is the bonding that is normally given to the districts every biennium. It appears to me from the numbers that it is being cut, and that could impact us as far as our bonding capacity. It could, depend upon interest rates, it could impact us around anywhere from $9 to $12 million on the next bond issue. So that's just a kind of an overview. Again, all this is strictly a proposal, and it's nothing that we can put in stone yet because it hasn't gone through all the vetting process.
Questions or comments? Dr. Cole?
Can I just ask quickly, and then I'll come back later with maybe a few other questions. Could you go over those numbers again about, you said transportation could be 19 million.
Yes.
Health, 6 million.
Mm-hmm. Textbooks, 3.5.
Uh-huh.
Professional development,
PD,
1.3.
okay.
And those textbooks and professional development is part of what is called flexible focus funds.
Okay. And SEEK was 6 million if, assuming.
Yes, and that,
right.
and we've already incorporated that into
Okay.
the draft budget itself. We expected that based on our expectation of our assessments going up.
Okay, thank you.
Board Member Geese?
I'm not sure if this question is perhaps the most appropriate for your office, but if not your office, perhaps Dr. Polio could answer. But what are we doing to communicate these numbers with those in Frankfurt? and the impact that that legislation could have on our district.
I'm having a lot of meetings, driving back and forth a good amount of time to Frankfurt. And I think our lobbying firm, MMLK, was right there, is keeping me scheduled very closely in Frankfurt. So we're discussing that with them and the impact. And I think we also are taking it from a statewide perspective because, we are in a situation where, yes, it'll be painful, but I think, we can find a way through it. But we also have a lot of districts and superintendents that I collaborate that are currently struggling to make payroll. And these cuts could be devastating to those districts. So from a statewide perspective and an education perspective, it's important for us too.
Ms. Horn?
Just looking at the the recent assessments and what it came in. Is there any in the projections looking at the taxes that have just come in for the current? Because we started this budget so long ago. Is there any thing that looks hopeful that it might be even more than we thought for what we're projecting in our revenue for?
Somewhat. John, you want to?
Yes, so originally, I think for the working budget, we were projecting a little bit over 3%. The most recent receipts are closer to 4%.
Right.
So they are looking up, and they're looking better than what was originally projected. That will help.
Yeah, so in dollars, is it, because, I'm looking at what we thought and then what it ended up being, it was what is that number? Is it 18 million? And then what did we estimate? So what's the difference between the two? Do you know what I mean?
I don't have those numbers right in front of me. I
Okay.
don't know, John, do you remember? But
I don't, but I could,
Okay.
it'd be easy to obtain.
Okay, yeah, that'd be just, there could be a little hope if we are higher in a percentage increase than we thought.
it could be an extra 2-3 million maybe,
Yeah.
which everything is helpful.
It all
Yes.
counts.
Yes.
Yep.
Ms. Duncan?
There was a part on here that I did not understand, a statement in here, and I wrote it all out, and then maybe if you can clarify this for me. It's about where the district has agreed to waive $4 million in transportation expenses for early childhood in order to move the program to more certified instruction, adjust for grant reduction, and provide a much, a budget, or provide as much budget flexibility as possible. But once I read that, I went back and read it again, and I'm really not sure. It says we're supposed to waive $4 million in early childhood transportation as it relates.
Yes. Our transportation department provides the transportation for early childhood. They do that also for special needs. And until, is it 3 years ago, John? 3 years ago, the early childhood would pay back at the end of the year, they would pay back what the transportations cost. They had a billing and they would pay us back. When we switched to certified staff, that put a pretty tight increase on early childhood. And this board, or the board 3 years ago, felt it was important to make sure, in some cases it was by law we had to do, but also felt it was important to have certified teachers in early childhood. In order for them to afford that, then the board said that it was fine for us to waive what that cost of transportation was. Now, in some cases, they are still able to give us some funds back. Last year, John, was there anything?
I believe it was over $1 million.
Right. So last year, over $1 million. And once the year ends, that's when we kind of settle up And if they have excess funding that they have not used, then they return it to the general fund.
Okay,
Okay?
all right, thank you.
Other questions, Mr. Brady?
Thank you, Chair. Curious, you were talking about the governor's proposal would eliminate basically professional development. And I was curious to know, in that professional development cost, does that include the pay for folks to attend that professional development, or just the professional development services themselves without the cost of sending someone to it?
It could be used in both ways. It would be dependent upon how the school has decided. Now, we also have Title II that is to help with improving teachers and their learning. But once that allocation of the professional development out of the CARA Flex Focus funds is given to the schools, then they determine how they're going to use it following the guidelines. But it could be used for the cost of a teacher attending, and it could be for particular conferences even that they may attend.
Are Title II funds with some of the stuff that's coming out of DC, are those also possibly on the horizon to be cut?
At this point, we haven't heard that they were going to be cut any substantial amount. That's a little over $4 million, and we're projecting to receive that also.
The reason I ask is because there's been some discussion that's going on social media about, you know, professional development. Oh, some of this professional development is free, and you can go ahead and, you know, do it this way, or it's much less cost. It doesn't cost nearly as much if you do it online or something. And my response to that is I'm grateful that there's an, you know, cost, cutting alternative, but you still have to pay for people to, you know, do their job.
Absolutely.
So just putting that out there. And also, you know, we also heard about this proposed cut of 12% of administrative cost. Yes. And there are some that are pushing the narrative that JCPS is a state subsidiary, not really its own, you know, independent governing body. I'm just kind of curious, and this might be more of a question from legal, but would that even be legal to do? Because to me, it seems to be that really would be no different than the governor telling the city of Louisville to cut their administrative budget by a certain percentage, even because I see both of us as being independent governing bodies.
That's correct. This Jefferson County School District is a school district like every other school district in Kentucky. It's an independent legal entity, technically a municipality, which makes it very much like a city.
So just to clarify, from a legal perspective, the idea that JCPS is a subsidiary is not correct, and there doesn't seem to be very much legal standing to be able to direct another independent governing body how to direct or how to apply its budget.
I agree with that statement.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay, at this time, I think we've answered all questions and comments. Oh, no, we have not. Dr. Kolb, and after this, we are going to call for the vote. Dr. Kolb?
I warned you that I may come back. A lot has been made of, as Chair Brady said, the administrative cost, not as Chair Brady, as Member Brady said, the administrative costs. And on page 12 of the report you gave us, you show an administrative business office expense of 3.83% on that pie chart. Could you just explain why you think, you know, or why indeed that number is more reflective of reality than other numbers that are floating around?
That percent is a reflection of the true administrative business cost to operate in this district compared to our total expenditures. What the governor's proposal has included are school administration, which is function codes 2400, and instead of the denominator being the total expenditure, he has taken the denominator of what we call function 1000, which is instructional expenses. So it's not really, in my opinion, comparing apples and apples.
Well, that wouldn't be a percentage even, would it?
No, not really.
I mean, that'd be a ratio, but not a
It's a
percentage.
ratio, right.
So,
Yes.
I mean, to call it a percentage is either, deception of the people of Kentucky or just somebody that has no conception of how math works. Right. And I wanted to tag on to what you said about transportation and also what Member Brady said, or maybe it was Dr. Polio about other districts. The KSBA, Kentucky School Boards Association, sent out their initial analysis of the state budget bill, which is very detailed, and they say, and I'm quoting straight from an email that we all received, the biggest portion of the cut in total SEEK is transportation funding, which is state mandated, intended to be fully state funded, is already less than 60% state funded. This proposal would further cut this funding by $128 million. This would be one of the largest cuts in education funding ever experienced in our state. Such a cut, with the additional costs and unfunded mandates passed along to you, will push some of you into insolvency and perhaps cause shutdowns. We are moving into uncharted waters. So is the transportation piece, I mean, it's probably hard to, all the cuts are so extreme and troubling, it's probably hard to gauge, but is that the one that we should really be most concerned about?
That one, yes, you should be definitely concerned about. And if something happens with this 12%, that is something we are extremely concerned about, because that 12% includes principals, assistant principals, But yes, the transportation, $19 million, and it impacts every district across the state.
Right. So with that 12%, and I may be asking you to speculate a little bit, but and you indicated it a little bit just then, what would that really look like on the ground? Like what would we have to, who would lose their jobs,
We would have to shift $16 million out of schools, mostly schools, and some central office, and it would impact, now principals are required by law, so therefore we would have the principal, so it would impact assistant principals, counselors, a lot of office staff that is in the schools. We could not operate, schools cannot operate without support.
Sure.
So
this proposal would actually be taking resources away from schools as opposed to pushing them into it, which is, I think, what the goal should be.
Right.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
At this time, is there a motion to receive the general fund draft budget for fiscal year 2018-19? Motion by Ms. Duncan, seconded by Ms. Horn. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you so much for your work this evening. We're going to move on to the consent calendar. Before we do that, I want to quickly say, I know we're getting ready to run out of, we've got 6 minutes on TV time, and there was something that I was supposed to do at the beginning of the meeting that I did not do. That does not have to be an agenda item. We don't have to amend the agenda. But in an effort to make sure that we continue to have open communication about the work that we're doing as we're moving toward the end of the road for our superintendent search, I have been given permission by the General Counsel to announce when the forums are going to be. This is not an agenda item. This is just an announcement that I intended to make at the beginning of the meeting. So my apologies. I got so involved with wanting the students to do their presentation. So quickly, I would like to say that we have public forums scheduled on Thursday, January the 25th at Central High School at 6 o'clock. That is this Thursday at 6 o'clock. And it will be moderated by Monica Harden from WLKY 32. On Monday, January the 29th at 6 o'clock, we will be at the Gaines Academy, and students will be in charge. They will ask the questions for elementary, middle, and high school. On Tuesday, January the 30th, we will be at Ballard High School, and Jerry Eves will be the moderator, a graduate of Ballard High School. On Thursday, February the 1st, we will be at Pleasure Ridge Park High School, and that will be moderated by Don G., a graduate of PRP. That completes my announcement. I am not asking for any change with the agenda. I did get permission to do this earlier today from our General Counsel, so hopefully you will know that I'm not in trouble. Having said that, let's move on to the consent calendar, please. And I know, I'm sorry, Ms.
Question, are those all at 6 o'clock?
All at 6 o'clock, yes, ma'am. Everyone is at 6 o'clock. Thank you. I appreciate your patience, and I apologize for being a little absent-minded earlier. So we're moving on to the consent calendar, and I know that item S1 will be pulled down by Mr. Brady. Are there any other items that need to be pulled down? Okay, hearing none. Is there a motion to approve the consent calendar with all items except S1? Motion by Mr. Brady, seconded by Ms. Horn. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Item S1 is the recommendation for approval of memorandum of agreement with Crocus Academy, Fagan-Bush, to expand early Head Start services to additional eligible students. Mr. Brady, do you want to speak to this before we vote on it, or you just want to vote on it?
I do want to vote on it separately. I just want to simply state that I've had concerns about this about this time last year when we first initially voted for this item. My concerns still remain, and that's the reason I wanted a separate vote.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is there a motion to vote on S1 recommendation for approval memorandum of agreement? Is there a motion? Ms. Horn, is there a second? Dr. Kolb, all those in, I'm sorry. I'm sorry? Discuss the one that we just pulled down? Yes, ma'am.
I would like to ask, this is such a, exciting thing for that area of town because we were underserved in that area. Can you talk a little bit about kind of how this happened, that, we needed to have early childhood seats? And this is kind of an interesting way to do it without building a facility ourselves, and to look around in the area where there was desperate need. Can you just talk a little bit about it just so we can understand, because...
Yes, the Office of Head Start has actually encouraged community partnerships with other private providers, and especially in underserved areas. And the location of Crocus Academy at Fagan-Bush was an area that we definitely needed seats in that area. And this is also an early Head Start facility. We have 8 seats. So this was really a pilot for Jefferson County to try and see if we can make a private-public partnership such as this work. And we are still working on the work. It's in progress. So far, we've made good progress, and I would like to say that we have had no problems regarding the concerns that were brought before the board last year, and we continue to monitor that situation very closely. It is stipulated in the contract that any violation of those provisions in the contract will result in immediate termination of the contract. So as far as we understand, those have all been abided by, and so yes.
And then just looking at the map that Dr. Wilner brought to our attention of areas of Jefferson County that are underserved for, I guess early childhood educational quality, educational opportunities, there may be other facilities in that map area that we can look and explore using this as a model rather than, again, thinking of building our own facilities which are in these areas, if there are facilities that we can partner with. Is that?
That is definitely something that we should continue to explore. I will say there have been challenges with the line of authority and supervision over the instructional pieces in general, and as well as other logistical pieces with this. We overcame a lot of the challenges, but that continues to be a risk factor when you have a private-public partnership with folks that are not Jefferson County employees. So that is a risk that we have to calculate. Is that something that is worth the ability to provide seats in areas that are underserved?
Yeah, and I think just my last comment is that we have a question of access to early childhood is one of these big goals, I guess I'll say. I'm hopeful that as a board, as we really embrace our governance role in the early childhood area, that we can also look toward trying to problem solve on that most important question of expanding and just lack of access, and trying to take on that puzzle of how we can increase early childhood, because if you invest early, we all firmly believe, I know this board is led by Ms. Porter in her advocacy of early childhood, that we've learned that it matters to pay it on the front end rather than on the back end in remediation.
Absolutely, we agree.
Thank you, Mr. Brady, and then we're going to call for the vote.
All right, since we're discussing this, I just want to clarify my concerns, just the fact that this is a religious organization. I have some concerns about separation of church and state. I'm glad that there is no violations, but my concerns still remain. And also, I was concerned about the fact that we were spending $466,000 to upgrade facilities for 8 seats. So just want to be able to get that on the record, because I was trying to be brief earlier, but since we're talking about it, I just want to at least provide some details so you know why I have concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve consent item S1, which is the recommendation for the approval of the agreement with Crocus Academy, Fagenbush? Board Member Geese, is there a second? Dr. Cole, all those in favor? Those opposed? Motion passes. Board Member Brady opposed that particular motion. So thank you for that, and we're going to move on. We now have a tie bid. Vice Chair Wilner.
Okay, item numbers 80 and 441 on bid ID 7509 for instructional and office supplies goes to National Art and School Supplies.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll move on to the board planning calendar. Is there a motion to receive the planning calendar? Dr. Wilner, seconded by, let me get the second and then we'll have the question. How's that? Is there a second, Dr. Cole? Question, Ms. Horn?
Then just for the February 27th meeting, I think that the Finance Committee is going to do that recommendation in that meeting. So just take that under advisement for adding that agenda item related to audit.
Yep, we got it.
Is there a motion to receive the planning calendar? We've done a motion and a second. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. We're going to move on to committee reports, and then from there to board reports. There is no executive session, so we're moving forward. Any committee reports? Discussion? Committee reports? Hearing none, we'll move to board reports. Board reports, Dr. Wilner.
Just want to talk about 2 items. The first one has to do, and all of us as members of the Kentucky School Board Association, the bill that folks are most concerned about having an impact on schools is the tax credit for private school tuition or for donations to private schools, that this would be absolutely devastating. And what I'm hearing from a number of state legislators is that they are getting a lot of calls in favor of this, that there's a very organized campaign to support this bill. And so I just think that we as board members, certainly need to be following KSBA's advice and reaching out and letting our constituents know that that's a concern, and that we need to be as organized as the folks who are in support of it. So that's number one. And the other one, I just wanted to bring this up because I've been contacted by a number of constituents about School Choice Week. And school choice in Jefferson County is such a positive thing. I took advantage of it. My kids went to magnet schools. Others, choose which school fits their kid best. And so we think of school choice as this very positive thing within Jefferson County Public Schools. But I would encourage folks to Google School Choice Week. It is funded by millionaires, billionaires who have a distinctly anti-public school agenda. And so I want to, this is National School Choice Week, by the way, which is why this is timely. The other reason that it's timely is that the National School Choice folks have actually delivered to many of our schools boxes full of National School Choice propaganda, bright yellow scarves. You may even see on social media some of our kids being tweeted out wearing their bright yellow scarves. I know that this is with absolutely no ill intent on behalf of any of our schools. I think people are maybe just not aware that this is a very different type of school choice than that we have and are so proud of in Jefferson County Public Schools. So just wanted to make folks aware of that. And again, I appreciate the several constituents have reached out to me, who've sent me pictures that they've seen on social media so that we can be aware of that this is going on.
Other reports? Ms. Duncan, do you have something?
Just to,
Yes, ma'am.
I have been able to attend 2 facilities meetings, and I find those very helpful to be able to listen to the concerns of the people who are working in those buildings. And that is, I think there's another one tomorrow night at Phoenix. And it's just very helpful to be able to listen to those concerns. And mostly concerns are about space and whether these things are going to work with space. I also had a chance to take part in the audit. KDE is auditing Olmsted Academy North, and I was able to go in yesterday. They called me to come in and talk about the great work, really, that is going on at Olmsted Academy North. And the thing that I am most impressed with that's happening in many of our schools is this equal emphasis on improving instruction and improving, and the impact that that has on student achievement. And where there's coaching and improving instructional practice, the impact on student achievement is being demonstrated in many of our schools. So just wanted to report that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Board Member Geese.
Just had a very quick report. This Saturday at 8 a.m. at Doss High School, I'll be hosting my 2nd annual breakfast with Board Member Geese for all District 4 principals. I know several of our central office staff, including Dr. Polio, will be making an appearance there. I just wanted to draw everyone's attention to that and say that anyone in the audience who would like to attend, you're more than welcome. This is something I started when I was newly elected to the board around this time last year. It quite simply is an opportunity for us to get together and focus on District 4 in particular. More than anything else, it's a listening session. We'll all be going around, we'll have a timer running, and I'll be sitting at a table with elementary, middle, and high school District 4 principals to listen to their needs for the year so that I can better communicate those needs from my seat. So anyone who's interested in coming, please do.
Thank you. Dr. Kolb.
Do you cook breakfast for everybody at those?
Panera does.
Well, I first wanted to apologize to Dr. Carter and Dr. Hazelton for having to spend so much time with Dr. Polio. I know it's probably been rough. So thank you for your diligence. And then I just finally wanted to say, to echo what Dr. Polio said about the board retreat last Friday. I mean, I think, you know, as I found out a year doing this job, like there's nobody else that can understand what this job is like except fellow board members, and it's, you know, it's like being a member of a family. Like we all have our kind of crazy parts, and you know,
Speak for yourself.
Some of us more than others, and you know, we fight, we argue, we might even yell at each other. But I think, you know, the thing that I have absolute confidence in is that even when we're disagreeing with each other strongly, that it's because we just have different images of what is best for kids. You know, everybody up here has that really at the center of what they're doing, and unfortunately that can't be said of everybody in politics, but I know it's definitely true of everybody up here. So, you know, I have fun with my dysfunctional family up here, or functional family, I should say, yeah, up here.
Thank you, Dr. Kolb. Other board reports? Okay, at the last meeting, I did not give the report. I said I would save it for this time in the interest of time, and I am still mindful of time, but since we were talking about the board and Dr. Polio has talked so strongly about culture and climate, my comments for the last meeting are still appropriate for this meeting in that I wanted to say a few remarks about climate. Effective school boards give priority attention to climate because it is an important factor in what students and teachers are able to accomplish. Climate is also a critical contributor to how parents and others in the community view schools and view this board. Our board will continue to articulate values such as respect for others, civility, integrity, and inclusion. So we are a family of 7, but those are some of the things that I think we are most focused on, and I would like to thank this board for the hard work that we did at our retreat last Friday. We have a lot of work to do. We are committed to taking care of the multiple tasks that we have to take care of, but working together is the key. So I want to thank the board for your hard work, and I also want to thank the JCPS staff for all the hard work, Dr. Polio, and those that presented, and those that work hard every day for the district. I am a firm believer in saying thank you now while people can hear it. So thank you, and it seems to fit in with your, right after yours, I think it was most appropriate. So this is talking to the good family. So thank you so much. Are there any other board reports? Okay, hearing none, there is no executive session this evening. And is there a motion to adjourn? Before we adjourn, thank you, Ms. Duncan. Thank you, Southern. We have had a wonderful time. Is there a motion to adjourn? Board Member Geese, seconded by Ms. Horn. All those in favor, motion passes. And we are adjourned at 9:43. Thank you.